Welcome to Run, Jump, Stomp, a podcast about games, because we needed another. You can find the show notes for this episode, as well as other content, at runjumpstomp.com. This is episode number 37 for the week of November 1st, 2015. I'm Bill, your host, and this week I'll be reviewing Guild Wars 2 HoT of Thorns. That's the whole show. I already did the review, and it took a really long time to talk about everything that I wanted to talk about, so I don't really have time to put anything else in the show this week. I do want to add just one thing. I'll give you guys a couple of headlines that caught my eye, but I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them. The first headline was that Nintendo, in typical weirdo Nintendo fashion, they finally announced their first mobile game, and they did it in an incredibly odd way. So they had an earnings report, and they didn't say anything about the game. And then finally, during the Q&A section, somebody said, "So, do you have anything to say about this new game?" And they're like, "Yes, it's, I forget what it's called. It's called Miimoto," which sounds like Miyamoto to me. And it's been delayed until 2016. So that was their announcement. They weren't going to say anything unless somebody asked them about it. So weird. I don't know what Nintendo's doing over there. The other thing that caught my eye, and then we'll get on to the Guild Wars 2 review, was Batman Arkham Knight finally re-released on Steam. And I guess some people are still having issues with it. So it's not looking good for the Batman series, and I would not recommend that you go anywhere near this on anything other than a console, because apparently it's just not working out. Anyway, that all being said, stick around, Guild Wars 2 review, and then I'll throw some music in at the end. Thanks for listening. So Guild Wars 2 HoT of Thorns, the first expansion to the MMO that is definitely my favorite, has finally come out, and it's been out for a little while now. I didn't do a review right away because I didn't want to just do my initial impressions. My initial impressions are always good for new content in a game that I already like. So I wanted to make sure that I gave myself time to let everything really sink in. Now, before I go on, I want to make sure that you know that I have not finished the story. I have not done all of the maps. I have not tried all of the modes. Rating is not even out yet. So this is still an early impression of the game, but this is the review that I'm going to give. Let's talk about what you get with HoT of Thorns. Now, first off, Guild Wars 2 came out 3 years ago and has not had an expansion since. And I think that the reason for that was because they were not going to do expansions. Their goal was to release content all the time. And that's what they did for a really long time. They continually released content, which was cool. But it made you feel like you couldn't take a break from the game. And while I'm sure that was good for their cash shop or their gem shop at first, after a while people were like, okay, I'm burnt out and I can't keep up. At least for me, I could not keep up with the amount of content that Guild Wars 2 was getting. So I ended up leaving and playing something else for a while. Now, when they made the announcement last year that they were making an expansion and detailed what they were going to add to it, I got really excited again and started playing. And I didn't start playing again right away. I mean, I played a little bit and I would say, oh, I'm not sure what I want to do here, and I'd go play something else. But as the release date approached, I ended up spending a lot more time in Guild Wars. I made a brand new character. I was like, all right, I'm going to leave my warrior behind. I'm going to try an elementalist. And I played the heck out of the elementalist. And and this is before they announced the elite specializations, which is the first thing that I want to talk about. So I played the Elementalist. My goal was, before the game came out, to get my Elementalist up to 80. I was easily able to do that. That's one of the great things about Guild Wars 2 is you can level up pretty quickly in the game and then still be able to go around and do all the content that you missed by leveling quickly. Because as you go to other zones, it levels you down to those zones. So it still stays really fun. So anyway, I got my Elementalist to level 80, still had time. Then they announced the Druid, which is the elite specialization for the Ranger. And they said that it was a healer spec. So I immediately started focusing on leveling up a brand new Ranger. I got him all the way up to level 80. And then I got my Guardian up to level 80. So by the time the game finally, or the release finally came out, now I have 4 level 80 characters. And I'm sure that there's lots of people that have many more characters than I do that are level 80. But I think this might be the only time I've ever had an MMO where I've had 4 max level characters. I usually just don't have that much time. So now I have to make the decision. Which elite specialization am I going to do? Well, let's talk a little bit about the elite specializations. The first thing that I want to know is that, and they didn't do a very good job communicating this with the players, is that you don't just click a button and you have that specialization. It's not like the other specializations. The elite specializations, you have to spend hero points on it. Now, if you don't play Guild Wars 2, hero points are gained every time you level up, okay? But once you're 80, you can't gain more hero points by leveling up. Instead, you have to find them on the map. Maybe you have to fight a thing, or commune with this place of power, or complete a jumping puzzle. Different activities to get you these hero points. So you got to get a lot of hero points. And in order to unlock your elite specialization, it was 60 hero points. And then in order to train all of the abilities that you can get throughout your new specialization, that was supposed to be 400 hero points that you would have to spend to get the full unlock of all of your specialization for one class. Now, this seems like a lot, and it is, but I was perfectly happy with it. I was slowly progressing through. You got to remember, the character that I was playing was brand new. I had just gotten him to level 80 right before the game started, and I didn't have a backlog of hero points from doing map completion. So I had to go around and find hero points, and it was tough. It was not easy. But then I got those 60 points and I spent them, and I unlocked the Druid specialization on my Ranger. And that was all that I had unlocked. Now, there were a lot of people who thought 400 was too many, and I can understand why people might think 400 is too many, but I think that they reacted the wrong way. A lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, I'll say an extremely vocal minority of people decided that they thought that the game was asking too much of them. And so less than 2 days after the game came out, people were complaining that they didn't have their entire elite specialization unlocked yet. Now, these are the same people who, if ArenaNet had just given it to them, they would have said, oh my gosh, there's 2 days into the game and I've got everything unlocked. Way to go, ArenaNet. I don't have anything to do now. But instead, ArenaNet put everything behind a wall and said, you've got to climb over this wall to get your elite specialization. We've given you a goal. Go ahead and attain that goal. And everybody, well, I keep saying everybody, these people complained, and they complained in the worst way possible. They take a game that they like, and then they go to Metacritic, which is a terrible place, and they say, we're going to give it a 0 out of 10 review. tanking Heart of Thorns score, which is really bad, because now there's going to be people who look at that score and they're going to say, oh, I'm not going to play it. But the game is really good, and people are giving it a 0 out of 10 because they disagree with one aspect of the game, that it's too hard to level up. So again, I can see why people thought that 400 was too much, but I think that they went about complaining about it the wrong way. So ArenaNet gets a whole bunch of bad reviews on Metacritic, and then foolishly they respond and they say, okay, fine, we'll give you what you want. We'll lower it from 400 points down to 250. Now, that's a pretty big nerf. I had not progressed very far. I'd only unlocked my first specialization, which was 60 points. I don't know how much it costs for one now. I was really enjoying working through the list. It gave me a sense of progression, and I felt like I was gaining power as I went through this, even though I wasn't gaining levels. And I think that by the time I finished the story, I probably would have had the whole thing unlocked, and I would have had a real sense of accomplishment. Other people that I've talked to, they had made it about halfway through, so they had earned like 200 points into it, and they were really enjoying unlocking things the same way that I was. They were just ahead of me. And then suddenly there was a patch and they were done. They got that feeling of accomplishment taken away from them because people were complaining and giving ArenaNet a bad score. It's just, the community backlash for the elite specializations is ridiculous, and I really think it's sad that ArenaNet folded to them so fast. I really hope that they don't do this with the other content, which we'll talk about the other content in a little bit. Again, I hadn't made it that far, so I am still leveling my druid and working through that elite specialization. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm about halfway through now, so I'm really enjoying it. Now, the specializations that I've tried so far, I've tried druid, love it. My original main character in Guild Wars 2 was a warrior. And when they announced the Berserker, which is the elite specialization for the warrior, I was like, I don't know about that. It doesn't really seem like something I would enjoy. I was definitely wrong. I've been playing a Berserker in PvP, structured PvP, so it's like 5-on-5, not in World v World. And I'm having an absolute blast with it. I've been running hammer, mace, torch, and there's lots of CC, and I'm having a lot of fun with the Berserker. I also unlocked Tempest. Tempest is really fun, and that's another one where when they announced it, I was like, oh man, I'm not too sure about the Warhorn for skills for the Elementalist, but it's really fun. I'm not sure which of the three that I've played I like better. They all feel incredibly unique and different, which is one of the great things about Guild Wars 2. All of the professions have their own nuances, and none of them feel like any of the others. I think the next one that I'll try and unlock is the Dragon Hunter spec, but right now I'm really trying to focus on completing my my elite specialization for my Ranger. So that's elite specializations. There's one for every class, and they're very, very fun. I definitely think you should check them out. Now, before I talk about anything else, they also added another profession to the game, and that is the Revenant. I have a Revenant. He's only like level 8. I'm not focusing on my Revenant right now. I've been playing it a little bit, and it is definitely fun. I like where they're going with it, and all I can say is that the new way that skills work with this class are really, really cool. Let's talk about my favorite thing about what's this thing called? Expansion. That's what it's called. It's called an expansion. Let's talk about my favorite thing about the expansion. It's the action camera. This is something that we did not even know about until I think it was like a week before the game actually launched. One dude basically worked on this action camera. At least that's the feeling I got, is that it was just this one guy worked on it. He worked on it on weekends in his free time for like a year. And it is the #1 best change to the game. They did an entire video where they explained how it works, but basically it makes Guild Wars 2 feel way more like an action game than it ever did before. You don't have to hold down your right mouse button in order to move the camera. It's just always locked down. Now, if you don't like that, it's completely optional. You can go back to the old way that it works, but once you've used it, I feel like there's no way that you can go back and still enjoy the game as much. It's so good. One of the things I really like about it, and you know, this is very Ranger focused right now, but I guarantee that it applies to other characters as well, is like my longbow 2 ability. When I push that, my Ranger will shoot like a bunch of arrows, like bap, 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 bap. And one of the really cool things is, like, let's say I'm in the middle of that cast and I hit 3 arrows into one target and it dies. I can immediately just move the camera to the next target and that cast will continue shooting wherever I'm aiming. So it really it really adds a level of interactiveness to the fights that wasn't there before. And before, I still loved the combat before, but now it's just so much better. If you take the action camera and you bundle it with the newly released Steam controller, you can now play Guild Wars 2 with a controller. I tried it before the expansion came out, and I couldn't do it. I tried it after the expansion came out. Like, I made a new character and moved around a little bit. And it is definitely something that you can do. Now, I won't be doing this, and that's probably because I've got 3 years of muscle memory built into mouse and keyboard with this game. But if you have a Steam controller and you're thinking about checking out Guild Wars 2, it's definitely a game that you can play with the Steam controller. So check it out. It's really good. And even if you haven't been if you have been playing for a long time, if you're more determined than I am, you could probably get by with the Steam controller, no problem. One of the things I don't like about the expansion is the inventory. Now, the inventory didn't really change, but oh my God, something has got to be done about inventory management in this game. There are so many new items that your bags are full. If you trip over a leaf, suddenly you're going to have so much loot that you're not sure what to do with it. Not only that, but you'll get chests or bags as reward from fights or as loot from monsters. And inside those bags, you will double click them and it will have more bags inside them. And you'll double click those bags and maybe it'll have more bags inside those bags. And it's just so much stuff filling up your inventory and you're trying to get rid of it. Now, people have complained about this a little bit, and ArenaNet have said, yes, there are some things that we messed up on, and it should be going into your wallet instead of your backpack. So I'm looking forward to that change, whatever change they decide to make there. But right now, my inventory, I have all 20 slot bags. I think 6 20 slot bags on my Ranger, I think. And it's constantly full, and I just can't seem to get, like, before the expansion came out, I was able to get that down to like 2 lines of stuff that I kept with me. Now I've got, like, it's just full all the time. I go into a dungeon and about halfway through the dungeon, it's like, your bags are full. What do you want to do now? And I'm like, oh my God. So then I got to stop what I'm doing, the fun stuff that I'm doing, and start dealing with inventory management, which is not what I want to do. Now, I hope that this isn't a ploy to get people to buy more bag space, because that would be not cool. Let's go from something I didn't like to something I did like. Map design. This game has always been very flat. I wouldn't have thought of it as very flat, but after playing the new maps, the old maps are flat. They just are. And the new maps are incredibly vertical. There's different layers to every one of the new maps. And I gotta say, Guild Wars 2 continues to make the absolute best looking maps in the genre, in my opinion. These places look fantastic. The wildlife you're up against is varied and unique, and I don't feel like I've seen a creature design I don't feel like I've seen creature design like this in any other game. So they've definitely gone above and beyond what I expected from them in map design. When you get into the Verdant Brink, that's the first new zone that you can enter. At first, these maps are really, really intimidating. You're never really sure where to go because things are on different levels, and you can easily fall from one level above down to a level below. And when playing through Verdant Brink, I never felt safe. There was always a feeling of danger looming, that some horrible monster could come out of the jungle at any time and destroy me with a few quick swipes if I wasn't paying attention enough. And this is what makes the mastery system in the game so damn great. As I go through the system, and basically the way that it works is they've got these new abilities that you can pick. Okay, so maybe I want to unlock gliding. So I click gliding, and then all of my experience points that I earn by doing things in the game go towards unlocking gliding. Once I get to a certain point, I can then use mastery points to unlock that ability. And then I can select the next thing that I want to unlock. It's really cool. A lot of people are complaining that it takes too long, but again, those people, they just want everything handed to them on a platter. They don't actually want to play the game. They just want to be handed loot. So I wouldn't listen to any of those people that are complaining about that. So the mastery system is really great. And as I go through the system and choose which points I want to put my experience toward, it makes it a lot easier to get across these very unfriendly and unforgiving maps. And it makes you feel a lot more powerful as you gain familiarity with the map, so you can easily start traversing this map, which before would take you a really long time to get from one side to the other. Once you've unlocked a few mastery points, you can get from one side to the other very quickly. And I've only really spent any time in the first two maps of the new expansion. But these maps are huge. And a lot of people were concerned that there was only going to be 4 maps. 4 maps is plenty to keep me busy. If it's not enough to keep you busy, then you've got more free time than I do. Meta events. These maps all have meta events. And for me, this is the most cryptic part of the game. I recommend that you watch the Wooden Potatoes video that he did about Verdant Brink, and I think it was Tangled Depths meta events. He explains how to go through and do the events. I haven't really focused on doing the meta events yet, as I'm still trying to unlock everything. Like my first day with the game, I didn't enjoy it at all, because I knew that I needed to get gliding 2 as fast as possible. So I did everything I could just to burn XP to get gliding 2. And after that, I've been really enjoying it. I feel like I'm making a huge mistake, though, ignoring the meta events kind of thing while I go on about my business. So I'm going to try and make a conscious effort to pay more attention to the meta events while I'm in these zones, because I kind of get tunnel vision when I'm playing. I'm like, okay, the next thing on the map that is nearby, I'm going to try and get to that thing. And I'll be looking around all over for it when I could be participating in events and having a lot of fun at it. And that's on me. That's not on ArenaNet. One of the really great things that they added is the break bar. The break bar adds really interesting mechanics to the fights. It's a fantastic addition to the game. And I think they need to, the only thing that I notice with it, I feel like it needs to work on downward scaling. So let me explain how the break bar works. Basically, you've got a certain, let's say that we have, let's say I have an ability that can knock a monster down. Now, if there's a big group of players and there's a big monster and we're all fighting it at the same time and we're all using these abilities that knock the monster down, then it's never going to be able to attack us, and it trivializes the content. So it makes it not fun. So what do they do in place of that? Well, they make it immune to crowd control effects. Now, before the expansion, the way that it would work is it would have Defiance on it. I think that's what it's called. And it would have stacks. So basically what would happen is everybody would use their CC abilities, or their crowd control abilities, to remove these stacks of Defiance from the mob that we're fighting. And then once we got it down to having no stacks left, somebody would use a crowd control ability on it to stun it, or to stop it from attacking or moving, or whatever it may be. And then we could do lots of damage to it quickly. That was fine, but the new break bar method is a lot easier to keep track of. So let's say that my guild and I are fighting a monster, and this monster has 2 health bars, basically. It's got its regular health bar, and then underneath that health bar, it's got a break bar. The break bar is reduced, and it'll be blue anytime that you have a crowd control effect used on it. So maybe an immobilize or a stun or a fear or anything like that. Now, when you use these abilities, instead of actually fearing the monster and having it run away, it lowers the break bar. And everybody will use those abilities all at the same time to get the break bar to be depleted. Now, once the break bar is depleted, different things will happen. Depending on the monster, maybe it'll take a lot more damage once you've reduced the break bar down. So it adds this mechanic to fights, which is a lot better than the old way. Not only that, but the more people that are in the area, the harder it is to push the break bar down. So that's really good. The only thing that I've noticed is that sometimes I'll be fighting a monster by myself that has a break bar. And as a ranger, I don't have access to lots of crowd control abilities. So I have trouble getting rid of that break bar, and it makes some fights a lot harder. I get the feeling that the jungle would be a lot easier on my Hammer Mace Torch Warrior, because he's got buckets of CC at his disposal at any time. The break bar mechanics are not exclusive to Heart of Thorns stuff either. They've also gone through, and ArenaNet's gone through and put break bars on the old bosses. So it makes the older content a lot more fun as well. The reasons I like this, it's easier to see than the stacks of Defiance. So that's really good. And it makes bringing something other than a straight up damage character more fun. And not only that, but when you bring a character that has lots of CC, not only does it make you feel useful, but other people now are noticing what you're doing, because they can see that break bar dropping down every time your hammer warrior swings that hammer around, or does that crushing leap, or whatever it's called, I forget, at the monster. They see that break bar drop down by a bunch. They know that you're being useful. Before, people didn't know that you were being useful unless you were doing lots of damage. So this is a really good change to the game. Speaking of good changes to the game, fractals have been changed in a fantastic way. And if you don't play Guild Wars 2, then fractals are basically dungeons. And I'm not really sure why ArenaNet separates them, but they do. Basically, dungeons, you go out into the world and you go into a dungeon and you fight a bunch of monsters, you beat a boss, and you are done. In a fractal, you go to Lion's Arch, which is the capital city, you go through a portal, you fight a bunch of monsters, you fight a boss, and you're done. So I'm not sure why there is this distinction between fractals and dungeons, but there is. Fractals came out after the original game came out, so they are much better at mechanics, and a lot of the mechanics in the dungeons in the game are stack in a spot, make sure that you've got a guardian to put wall up, and burst damage the bosses down. I haven't done dungeons since Heart of Thorns came out. Hopefully the break bars have changed that. In Fractals, however, you've always had a bit more of mechanics to the fight. So, for instance, there'll be a fight where you've got this hammer. If you carry it, it puts a debuff on you. And as you carry it around the zone, you'll get too much of the debuff, so you have to set it down and somebody else will have to carry it. And you have to carry this hammer for the whole zone, all the way up to the boss. And then you got to use the hammer. You got to kill monsters with the hammer in order to charge it, so that you can use the charge to break the seal on this giant that's imprisoned by the enemy. That's a really cool fight, and it's a cool mechanic that takes a lot of coordination to do. So that's the kind of thing, that's the difference between dungeons and Fractals, I guess, is Fractals are more difficult, but to me they feel more rewarding. Not like in the loot sense, but in the, hey, I accomplished this sense. So, the old way of doing Fractals would be you'd go in and you choose your level, and so you'd be like, oh, I'm going to do a level 10 Fractal because my gear, I'll survive a level 10 Fractal with the gear that I have. So you choose your level, you run 3 Fractals, and then you do a boss fight, and they're at random. Usually took like somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour to do. That's all been thrown out the window, though. Now, you just pick the one that you want to do and go, and you just do one. And if you want to do more after that, then you can do another one. It's awesome. And the reason it's awesome is because if I have 15 minutes to kill, I can probably do a Fractal. If I had 15 minutes to kill before then, I could only do the first Fractal and then have to leave, and I wouldn't have gotten any reward. So this is really for a quote-unquote casual player like myself who doesn't have as much time to play a game as others. I like this because that means I can get in, do some group content, and get out on a busy weekday. And that's fantastic. Speaking of really cool content, they also added guild halls. This is really awesome. And I think that this is their way to combat inflation. Because now the way that a guild hall works is they put these 2 guild halls in, and these things are unbelievably massive. Like, you cannot understand how big they are until you've seen one. I've got a video of me and my guild on my YouTube channel. We're doing the thing to unlock the guild hall, and when you see it, you're just like, oh my god, these are like full maps. That's what they are. These guild halls are basically full maps that belong to your guild, and it's really cool. So they're really, really big, and you have to capture the guild hall by buying a quest that costs like 100 gold. So you unlock the guild quest, and then you go in there, and you've got to fight a bunch of monsters in the guild hall in order to claim it. The fight is incredibly fun, and the fight scales. It scales up the more people you have. So tiny little guilds that have just like 4 people can do it. They'll just have to fight one set of monsters. Huge guilds, they can go in and do it with lots of people, because what happens instead is, instead of fighting one set of monsters, like 4 or 5 sets of monsters will spawn, and different groups will have to go to those monsters and beat them all at the same time. Anyway, it's really, really cool. Now, once you've claimed it, if you want to start upgrading it, there is a massive material sink, and I think this is a way for them to get some of the materials off of the trading post to try and get gold to be not quite as valuable as it is now. So they're basically taking these items out of the market, and that's going to push their prices up in the trading post, which I think is a good, it's healthy for the game, because now there'll be there won't be as much stuff. So if you're if you're a crafter, you can make this stuff and make some money at it. So it's got this massive materials sink. I do think that it would have been really cool is if instead of having a massive materials sink, which I do understand why they're doing it to clear off that trading post. But it would have been really good if you got these materials, perhaps, as rewards for doing things with your guild. That would have been really cool. So maybe my guild and we all go out to World v World for a night, and at the end of the night, because we were in a guild when we were doing it, or in guild groups when we were doing it, we get rewarded with the things that we need in order to progress our guild hall forward some more. That would have been really cool. One thing that I did notice is like some of the materials that you need are not found in the new zones. They're found in old zones. And at first I was kind of irritated by this, because I was like, man, I don't want to go out to Silver Wastes and farm up a bunch of coarse sand so that we can make the things that we need to get our guild hall further progressed. But I think the reason that they did that, and this is actually really smart of ArenaNet, is I think they did this so that other people in the guild who didn't buy Heart of Thorns would still feel that sense of accomplishment, because they were able to help get the guild hall progressed forward, even though they don't have Heart of Thorns and can't go to the new zones. So free-to-play players can help out with the guild hall just fine, as long as they can get to certain places in the game, which are not gated by having Heart of Thorns. So that's pretty good. I want to talk a little bit about the timing of the release of the game. They released this with the Halloween update, which seems really odd to me. Right before the game came out, they showed off these really cool shoulder pieces that you can get that basically have no skin for them, and instead will have a cloud of bats following you around in the game. Now, as with just about everything else in the game, it looks fantastic, and it made a lot of people ignore the new zones because everybody is farming the materials, because first off, in order to get this, you had to guess at the recipe. So they didn't tell us the recipe. People just had to figure it out, which is awesome. I like that. It seems really cool. I didn't try and figure it out because I don't have the money or the time for that. But other people did. And it seems like a really cool challenge to try and figure out these recipes. Now, one of the things that people did know that you needed was only dropped off the Mad King, he's the boss for the Halloween events for the game. So they turn on the game, and lots of people are just farming the Halloween King over and over and over again, rather than going to the new zones. And this kind of contributed to this idea that the zones felt a little empty. But that was also due to the fact that they broke the mega server. When they merged servers in Guild Wars, all the servers are playing together except for in World versus World. And if they just got enough people in one place, they just add another server to it. And you don't even really understand that it's happening, or you don't know that it's happening. Well, I guess there was a bug when they released it, and they've fixed it since. But when the expansion first came out, the mega servers were breaking maps into too many maps. So you would have too many copies of the map that you're on, and it would feel like there was nobody around in the jungle. Put this together with how vertical the maps are and how the maps have all these different levels to them, and it really made the jungle feel desolate, which is almost really cool because it made the jungle feel scarier. But the Batwings recipe, having the game come out at the same time as the Halloween update, did not help this. Another thing about the timing is this 3 years after the original game came out. Hopefully, they don't wait another 3 years for the next expansion. I know that this is going to keep me very busy for a very long time. The fastest that you could ever unlock your guild, or not unlock, but finish your guild hall completely is 9 months. So I don't see my guild finishing everything in 9 months, but I hope that we start to get maybe every year or every 2 years a new expansion for Guild Wars. And I know that originally they said they weren't doing expansions, but now that they are, I'm really happy that they are, because they've really knocked it out of the park. They just need to do this at a faster pace. Well, I mean, for me, for Heart of Thorns, there's so much stuff to do in this game, it's almost overwhelming. I constantly feel like I'm pulled in 7 different directions by the game, and I can't wait to sit down and play every chance I get. So the too long didn't read version of my review of Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns, that first expansion, it's fantastic. Making the game free to play, awesome move, because it's going to get more people to try it out, and those people are going to buy Heart of Thorns because Heart of Thorns is great. And they've done everything right with this expansion, at least for me. I'm having a blast with it, and I hope that you are too. That's my review for Heart of Thorns. This went a lot longer than I expected. Hopefully it didn't go too long, and you guys have an awesome day. All right, everybody, that's it for the show this week. If you want to support the show, do so with a review on iTunes. If you want to be part of the show, email me at runjumpstomp@gmail.com, or if you want to leave a voicemail, 260-RUNJUMP. You can also find me on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at runjumpstomp, and you can check out the website at runjumpstomp.com. As always, thanks for listening. Seeing as how it is the weekend of Halloween, I've decided to go with a song. It's a remix of a song from Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The artist is Nopes, which is a funny name, and the song is called Bloody Tears, which sounds a lot scarier than the song is, but it's a good song, so stick around and enjoy. See you next time.